There's a certain type of fear that only hits you when you're home alone, not the kind you feel when you're outside, not the kind you feel around strangers. This one is different. It's the fear that comes in the silence, the kind that appears when the house is quiet enough for you to hear every little sound, when something that never happens suddenly does. Tonight, I'll be sharing 4 extremely creepy true Home Alone stories sent in by viewers from around the world. Each one happened when the person was completely alone and completely vulnerable. And after hearing these, you might never feel truly safe in your own home again. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Dark Vision for more terrifying videos. Now, let's get into the first story. Story 1, The Scratching at the Basement Door. My name is Evan, and even after 7 years, I still think about that weekend more than I should. I was 17 at the time, and my parents decided to take a 2-day trip to visit my older brother in another state. Since I had exams coming up, I chose to stay home and study. They left Friday morning. By that night, I already regretted staying behind. Our house wasn't old, but it always had this uneasy quietness at night. The kind where you could hear the refrigerator humming from across the house. The kind where footsteps sounded louder than they should. It was around 11:40 p.m. I was in the living room playing video games with the volume low. At one point, I heard something that made me pause the game completely. A sound, very faint, very slow, a dragging, scratching sound. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe a branch against the house or something. But when I muted the TV, I realized exactly where it was coming from: the basement door. Now, let me explain something about that basement. I always hated going down there. It wasn't finished, had exposed pipes, dim lighting, and the walls were lined with storage shelves that created narrow aisles like a maze. It was the type of place where even in daylight you felt watched. So hearing scratching coming from behind that door instantly put me on edge. I sat perfectly still for a minute, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Interest in probity, be longer, slower, like nails slowly dragging down wood. I tried to brush it off. Houses make sounds, pipes expand, wood creaks. It could have been anything, but everything changed when I walked past the door on my way to the kitchen. As I stepped in front of it, something tapped on the other side. A single sharp tap. I froze. My breathing stopped. I stared at the door. I told myself I imagined it. Lack of sleep, stress, maybe a mouse or something. But then, from the other side, came a whisper. Evan. It was soft, almost too soft to be real, but I heard it. I swear I heard it. My stomach dropped, my hands went cold, and every hair on my arm stood straight up. Someone was in the basement. I backed into the kitchen, grabbed the longest knife we had, and called the police with shaking hands. The operator told me to stay where I was and not go near the door. But before the police arrived, something happened that still gives me nightmares. The basement door pushed outward, like something slammed into it from the inside. Not enough to open it, but enough to rattle the frame. I ran to the living room and locked myself inside with a knife. When the police arrived, 2 officers entered the house. One stayed with me. The other went down the basement stairs slowly with his flashlight drawn. A minute later, he called out, You're going to want to see this." I walked to the top of the stairs, but the officer told me not to come down. Still, I could see enough. The inside of the basement door, the side facing the stairs, was covered in deep scratch marks. Long, jagged lines carved into the wood. Not random marks. They were spaced evenly. Deliberate. Repetitive. Like someone or something had been clawing at the door for a long time. But the most horrifying part, the officers found bare footprints in the dust on the concrete floor. Fresh ones, human-sized. And they weren't mine or my family's. Someone had been hiding in my basement, probably for hours, maybe longer. The basement had a side door that led to the backyard, and it was unlocked. The officer said the intruder likely escaped through there when I went to grab a weapon. The worst part? The whisper. The fact they knew my name. That means they had been watching me, listening to me, maybe from the basement vents, maybe when I talked on the phone. I don't like thinking about it. My parents installed cameras and a new lock, but I still never stayed in that house alone again. Even now, as an adult, basement doors make me uneasy, because sometimes the scariest things aren't ghosts, Sometimes it's the people hiding right under your feet, waiting for the moment you're alone. Story 2, the face at the window. This story was sent in by someone named Sophie, who lived alone in a ground floor apartment after moving to a new city for work. She described the area as peaceful, but isolated. Her building backed up against a dense row of trees, and her bedroom window faced that forest directly. At night, it was pitch black outside. No streetlights, no neighbors walking by, nothing. Just deep darkness. She said the first 2 months living there were normal. Quiet, almost too quiet, until one night, that quiet was broken. It was around 3:06 a.m. when she woke up to a sound she couldn't immediately place. Tap, tap, tap. She thought maybe it was the radiator or the pipes making noise. But then the taps continued, slow, rhythmic, spaced apart. Tap, tap, tap. And they were coming from her bedroom window. Her bed was positioned directly across from it, but she kept her curtains closed at night because the forest outside always creeped her out. The tapping kept going, each one slightly louder. She sat up slowly. Her breathing grew shallow. She stared at the closed curtains. Then it stopped. For about 3 seconds, there was complete silence, and then 4 fingertips dragged across the glass. She could hear them clearly, the squeaking friction, the slow scraping sound moving from one end of the window to the other. That was when she realized the absolutely terrifying truth. Someone was standing outside her window. Her heart began pounding so loudly she swore the person could hear it. She didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't dare make a sound. Then she saw it, a shadow behind the curtains, a human-shaped silhouette, tall, still, facing her direction. The silhouette didn't move until it suddenly leaned forward, pressing its face to the glass so hard she could see the outline of a forehead, a nose, a chin, all through the thin curtain fabric. Her entire body locked up. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run, but she couldn't move a muscle. Suddenly, a low voice whispered from behind the curtain, "Open the curtains." Her blood turned to ice. She grabbed her phone and, without looking away from the window, dialed emergency services. The dispatcher told her to stay calm and stay on the line. But then, the silhouette shifted. She heard footsteps on the leaves outside, slow at first, then faster one, then running. By the time police arrived, the area outside her window was empty, but what they did find was somehow worse. Footprints, dozens of them, leading up to her window, circling it, pacing back and forth, as if the person had been there for a long time, watching her, waiting. One officer asked her, "How long do you think he was standing there before you woke up?" She moved out 3 days later. Story 3, the man under the sink. This story came from Caleb, who was 19 at the time it happened. His parents had gone on vacation for a week, leaving him home alone with the house to himself. He spent most of that week hanging out with friends, working part-time, and enjoying the freedom. On the 4th night, he came home around 11 p.m. He immediately noticed something strange the moment he stepped inside. The house smelled different, not like food or cleaning supplies, more like cologne. Cheap, overpowering cologne. He brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he walked through someone's perfume at the store or something. He took a shower, watched a movie, and went to bed around 1:30 a.m. At some point in the night, he woke up thirsty and went to get water. When he walked into the kitchen and turned on the light, something caught his eye. The cabinet door under the sink was slightly open. This was weird, because that cabinet never opened easily. The hinges were stiff, and you always had to pull hard to open it. He crouched down, put his hand on the edge of the door, and pushed it gently open. At first, he saw nothing, just darkness. Then the darkness moved. 2 wide eyes stared back at him from inside the cabinet. Someone was curled up inside, squeezed into the space under the sink, staring up at him. Frozen in shock, Caleb stumbled backward onto the floor. The man slowly began to crawl out of the cabinet. His movements were stiff, like he hadn't stretched in hours. He was skinny, pale, and his eyes were huge, like he'd been in the dark for too long. He stood up in the kitchen, towering over Caleb, and said in a calm, almost casual tone, "I thought you'd be home later." Caleb bolted out the front door and called the police while hiding behind a neighbor's car. Police arrived quickly. They found the man a few blocks away, walking calmly down the sidewalk like nothing had happened. The most disturbing part, he confessed everything. He broke into the house 3 days earlier. He'd been hiding in the basement during the day, crawling out to eat at night, and sleeping inside different cabinets so he wouldn't be found. He picked the cabinet under the sink because, in his words, it's close to the bedroom. Caleb moved out the next month. Story 4. The stairs that creaked when no one was there. This last story came from Laura, a 32-year-old woman who lived alone in a 2-story house she inherited from her grandmother. The house was old but well maintained. Everything creaked, the floors, the walls, even the kitchen drawers. But nothing creaked louder than the staircase, especially the 4th step from the top. It made a long groaning sound every time someone stepped on it. It was so distinct that Laura sometimes used it like a natural alarm. She always knew when someone was coming upstairs. One night, around 1:15 a.m., she woke up to her phone buzzing. It was just a notification, nothing important. But as she rolled over to put her phone down, she heard something, a sound she knew very, very well. Kriak, the 4th step. She froze. She knew exactly what that sound meant. Someone was standing on that step. She held her breath, listening. Then came another step, and another. Soft, slow footsteps climbing her stairs. Creak, creak, creak. Each one closer. Her bedroom door was closed, but she could hear the faint pressure of someone walking just outside it. Then silence, followed by breathing. Slow, shaky breathing, like someone standing right on the other side of the door. She grabbed her phone and quietly dialed emergency services. As she whispered into the phone, the breathing outside the door stopped. She thought the intruder had left. But then, a voice whispered through the door. "I know you're awake." She nearly dropped the phone. Police arrived in under 5 minutes. She heard them shouting commands from downstairs. Then heavy footsteps as the intruder ran. They caught him trying to escape through a window in the living room. He had a knife, a flashlight, and gloves. But what disturbed Laura most was what they found on her bedroom door. Small scratch marks around the lock. The intruder had been trying to get in, maybe for days, maybe weeks, learning her routine, learning the sounds of the house, learning how quiet he needed to be. She moved out after that night and never slept upstairs again. Being home alone can feel peaceful until the moment you realize something is off. A sound you've never heard before, a shadow where it shouldn't be, a whisper you didn't imagine. These stories are proof that you never truly know who's watching or how long they've been there. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe to Dark Vision for more terrifying true horror content every week. Stay safe, stay alert, and remember, sometimes the scariest things happen in the place you think is safest.